So it wasn't easy for me to decide that I had to stand up and be counted and argue that we should vote leave and take back control. But when there is a big decision, a momentous decision, as this referendum will be, you need to look deep into yourself and ask yourself some basic questions about why you're in politics and what it's for. And deep in my heart, there is a simple principle that motivates everything that I do. I think we're uniquely fortunate to be citizens of this country, uniquely fortunate to be heirs to its traditions of liberty and freedom, uniquely fortunate to grow up in a country that is the most tolerant, the most open, the most inclusive, the most inventive, the most dynamic in the world. And why is Britain like that? Why do we have all these advantages? Why, as Anna pointed out, do we want to preserve those advantages and pass them on to the next generation? The reason for that is because Britain, throughout its life, has pioneered and stood behind the values of democracy. Our basic principle has been, for hundreds of years, that the people who rule over us, the cabinet ministers, the MPs, the politicians, should be answerable to us. If they get things wrong, and boy, have we sometimes got things wrong, we should be able to throw them out and change direction. The most potent symbol of our democracy is not the mace in Parliament or the House of Commons or the state opening when the Queen comes to read her speech. The most potent symbol of our democracy is the removal van that turns up after a general election, when we kick out the guy who's failed and get in a new guy who's going to do better. The most important principle of our democracy is that what we decide as a nation is what our destiny as a people should be. And that's the problem with the European Union. Because of our membership of the EU, there are rules and regulations that are set by people that we never elected, whose names we've never heard of, and whom we cannot remove. The laws of the European Union are imposed by the European Commission. They're policed by the European Court of Justice. They're determined by individuals who, if we disagree with, we cannot remove. And in my own life as a minister, there have been all too many occasions when rules and regulations have crossed my desk. And I've said, I don't think this is good for Britain. I don't think this was in our manifesto. I don't think this is what the British people want. And I've been told by an incredibly nice civil servant, I'm sorry, Minister, I'm afraid you can't change it. We're in the European Union, this is European law, you just have to accept it. Well, I'm not going to accept it anymore. We should be a democracy. We have an absurd situation now where the European Union can set the tax rate for products on which there's VAT. And as a result, we now have taxes on tampons because the European Union believe that they are a luxury product.
Rubbish.
Tell that to Mrs. Gove. And the European Union's insensitivity, its arrogance, its neglect of basic democratic values, well, it's been bad for us. But it's been a tragedy for the people of Europe. As Anna mentioned earlier, look what's happened to all those countries that have been in the single currency. Look at what's happened in Greece. Its economy devastated. Look at what happened in Spain with record youth unemployment. Look at the way in Portugal that they've had to cut spending on health and welfare and public services. All of these countries have suffered because of the vanity and the ambition of the European elites who put their idea of European unity ahead of the reality of people's lives. Now, when politicians become intoxicated with their ideas and their ideology, there is a way of bringing them back down to earth, and that is by voting them out. But as long as we remain a member of the European Union, the people who make those laws in the Commission and the people who decide on those laws in the European Court of Justice cannot be kicked out by us. Indeed, they can't be kicked out by the poor people of Greece, Spain, or Portugal. So that fundamental lack of democracy isn't just something that I find painful as a British citizen. It's something that I find tragic as a European. And so for that reason, we need to leave, not just to recapture our democracy, but to set an example to other European nations that democratic values, that putting your own people first and rejecting the arrogant elites is the way to ensure that your country can prosper. If we vote leave, we not only take back control, we also set an example of democratic leadership to others. Now, as Anna and Nigel mentioned, our membership of the European Union isn't just bad for our democracy, it's bad for our economy. Every week we send £350 million to the European Union. That's our membership fee, that's the price of being part of this club. £350 million. Think what we could do with that. We could invest it in our NHS. We could deploy it in science, education, and apprenticeships. We could cut taxes for businesses. We could make sure that the genuinely innovative people who are developing the products that will make our economy a success in the future get the support and the investment that they need. At the moment, that money is wasted because it's spent by European bureaucrats whom we can't control and whom we can't kick out. I think that £50 million a day, that £350 million a week, should be spent by people who are accountable to you, people whom you can send to Westminster with a clear message: deliver or get out. Just think about it. If we vote leave, we take back control of millions of pounds of taxpayers' money that we can spend on our priorities. More than that, we also have the chance to take back control of our borders and to take back control of our laws. One of the problems with our immigration policy at the moment is that people fear that we don't have control of our borders. But if we left the European Union, we could decide who comes here. We could ensure that for those businesses that need talent from outside, whether it's a new curry chef for the Indian restaurant or a computer programmer for the IT startup, that we can get the talent. We could also decide that if there are refugees who are genuinely suffering, and Britain in its enormously tolerant and inclusive tradition wants to give them a home, we can do that. But at the moment, because we're members of the European Union, it's the European Union that dictates who can come here. Anyone with a European passport can come here. And those whom we might want to help, or who might be able to help us, have to go to the back of the queue. I don't think that's humane, I don't think that's right, I don't think it's in our interests, and I think it's in the best tradition of an open, inclusive and enterprising Britain that we should vote leave and take back control of our borders. Now, if you listen to some of the Remain campaigners, you get the impression that if we were, loony enough to vote leave, mad enough to think that we could survive as an independent country, deranged enough to think that, we should be like America, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, South Korea, Singapore, Israel, Japan. If we were crazy enough to believe that we could join the 100-odd other countries that are independent nations, that somehow everything would go wrong in Britain. We've all heard the scare stories. Farmers would be deprived of every penny, and they wouldn't be able to plant a single seed or milk a single cow without the Common Agriculture. The City of London, those poor bankers, thrown out on the streets. It's not such a bad idea. Anyway, because there's no way that we could sell financial services from London. Young people who want to go interrail, people who want to use their mobile phone on the continent. Outside the EU, we wouldn't be able to do any of those things. That is what the Remain campaigners, or at least some of them, want us to believe. And their vision is so deeply and bleakly pessimistic and negative. Because what they're really saying is, Britain, this country that we all love, is too small, too weak, and its people are basically too stupid to be able to succeed on our own without the European Commission there to hold our hand and to look after us. Well, I don't know about you. I don't think we need Jean-Claude Juncker to make a success of this country. I am optimistic about our future. I'm positive about what our children can achieve. If we vote leave, we take back control, we decide our future, and we can believe in Britain once more. And one of the things that I want to stress is that sometimes during the course of this debate, you'll hear stories about what the European Union have done, and the other side will say, oh, that's a scare story. That's a Euro myth. Actually, they're the side, peddling myths and scare stories. But sometimes you do pause for a moment and you think, that sounds so ridiculous, so absurd, that it couldn't possibly be true. Maybe there is someone on our side who's got the facts wrong. Maybe when they talk about bendy bananas, maybe they're trying it on a bit. Well, as they say on BBC Two, have I got news for you? The truth is that the European Union does have a rule on bananas. They can only be sold in bunches of regulation sizes, and they cannot be sold if they suffer from an abnormal curvature. The European Union has rules on the labelling of food, which mean that if you buy, as a treat for your family, some Marks and Spencer's smoked salmon, it has to say on the label, may contain fish. The European Union dictates that if I'm going to sell you some olive oil, that it has to be in a precise container of 5 litre size and no larger. Now, individually, each of these rules are ridiculous. But cumulatively, all of these rules, hundreds, thousands of them, pulled our country back. We never voted for them, it wasn't British politicians' idea to have them. But the independent think tank Open Europe calculates that our businesses have to pay the equivalent of 30-odd billion pounds every year to comply with all these rules. If we didn't, just think what we'd be able to do in terms of employing young people, offering them apprenticeships, increasing salaries for those who are hardworking, making Britain an economic powerhouse. And you don't need to listen to me to believe that workers in this country would be better off if we left the European Union. The leader of the Remain campaign, Lord Rhodes, who used to run Marks and Spencer's, when he was asked in the House of Commons what would be the impact on wages if we left the European Union, said wages would go up. Our businesses, led by brilliant people, supported by fantastic teams working for them, are already doing great things, but we could do so much more if we were outside the EU. And that's at the heart of my belief about the importance of voting leave. Because voting leave is a vote of confidence in ourselves as a country, in our neighbours as people that we trust and like and love, and in the enterprise and energy of the next generation. Voting to leave is a way of saying, we believe in Britain, we believe in better, we're taking back control. I am Gwamila Gunda, 48. I've never had a chance to vote on whether or not we should be members of the European Union. I suspect there are some people in this room, maybe one or two, who may have had the chance to vote in 1975. And I'll be honest, my parents, who did vote, voted different ways. One for in, one for out. And at the time, I can understand, I think I would probably have, in 75, voted for it myself. I would have thought, well, this is a great, great enterprise. This is a way of saying we want free trade and friendly cooperation with our neighbours. And the truth is, I still want free trade and friendly cooperation with our neighbours. But we can have free trade if we're outside. All the countries, from Iceland to the Russian border, are in a free trade zone. There's a free trade deal between the EU and Peru, Colombia, and other Latin American countries. So we can have free trade, and we can have friendly cooperation. In fact, I think we will be friendlier as a neighbour who wants the best for Europe than as a lodger who wants to leave but isn't allowed to. And more than that, I think that if we look back at the idealism that people had in 1975, or before when the European Union was set up, it was clear what they wanted to do. They wanted to bury all the enmities that gave rise to the Second World War. A noble idea. But if you look at the EU now, look at what's happened in Greece. where, as a result of the euro, you have a party in the Greek parliament that is openly Nazi. Look at what's happening in France and in other European countries, where the far right are stronger now than they've been at any time since the 1930s. As a result of the way the European Union's elites have arrogantly ignored the wishes of the people, we now have extremism in the European Union stronger than at any time in all our lifetimes. And also, we have razor wire going up, crisscrossing the borders of Europe in the south. We have a generation of young people who feel a sense of despair about the chance of ever getting a job, a home, or being able to raise a family. The European Union has moved from being an idealistic vision that so many of us could have believed in, into a job-destroying, democracy-denying, extremism-creating disaster. And that's why I think we vote no. Only 69 days left in this campaign. Already many of you in this room will have worked hard, talked to friends, done some campaigning, and I know that 69 days seems a long time. But the next 69 days could determine the future of our country, and I hope immeasurably for the better. I hope that in 69 or 70 years' time, everyone in this room will be able to look back and feel that they've been part of something very special. They've been part of a movement that includes people from all parties and none. People who are seasoned political activists and people who maybe never cast a vote before. People who want this country to go down one route or another, but who are united in believing that whatever route this country goes down, it's the people of this country in free democratic institutions who should decide. In this campaign, I'll be linking arms with Labour MPs and Liberal Democrats. In this campaign, I'll be walking the streets with people whose political views in many respects don't match mine. But I'll be pleased to do so because I know that everyone who's in this campaign believes in this country, believes in the values of democracy, believes in the virtues which made this country successful in the past and which keep the strength of this country ready to be renewed in the future. We're an amazing country. World's 5th largest economy, seat on the United Nations Security Council. Our armed forces, the most respected in the world. Our scientists, the most creative. Our National Health Service, the envy of the globe. Our national broadcaster, admired across the world. There are so many great assets that we have in this country. And that potential of the next generation. The strength of those assets. The amazing things that we can contribute to the world. They will all be liberated and unleashed if we vote leave and take control. So that's why, over the next 69 days, whatever happens, I will have an optimistic vision at the forefront of my mind. And that optimistic vision is of this country, independent, free, leading the world, standing up for democratic and inclusive values, and once more, a democracy, a great country, providing leadership and vision across the world. It's a great prize. Let's go out and grab it.